Yes.
All right, this is our team review session. It doesn't have to be secure, governed, product analytics. Who else do I manage? Optimize. Can be for anyone that wants to join. Let me know and I'll invite you. We're going to start off by reading our mantra. Please keep the following in mind throughout this team review session. We are not our designs. We will not offend anyone in this room intentionally. We will practice benevolent radical candor, which is to care personally but challenge directly when sending feedback. We will be open to receiving benevolent radical candor feedback and will be, if necessary, willing to let go of things that aren't working. These sessions are about candid talk, spirited debate, fun, and passion for what we do as designers for a living. All right. With that, Michael, take it away.
All right. Yeah, let me share my screen and go over the problem where the button is right in front of my face. I will start by sharing Arc and then I'll reshare when I get to Figma. So I know we're all relatively familiar with this problem, but also covered at a high level just so we have it for the sake of the recording. Zoom out of the way. So we've been, for the past while, we'll say, we've been looking to improve the security experience within the merge request page. So actually just pull open the existing merge request experience. So there are some security features within the merge request today, but there's a number of usability problems with those. Largely, we have these security widgets, code quality, license compliance, and stuff that contain a lot of information, but we've learned that it's really difficult for users to know what needs to be done with this information. There's nothing really like telling users what actions need to be taken on these. And that actually conflates a little bit more when we get to how security policies can impact merge requests too. So at a high level, people can set up security policies to enforce what needs to be resolved or dealt with within a merge request. And when the security policies are triggered and find something that needs to be resolved, it would essentially block the merge request until either a specific security finding is remediated or removed, or it has been approved by a security approver. But there is very little transparency in the merge request experience around what policies are actually being evaluated and what the outcomes of those policies are. So really, when you come into a merge request today, if a security policy is being evaluated, it will immediately put a approval requirement on the merge request without any context around why. And it's difficult for users to sort of understand that that approval is tied to a policy and that policy is still being evaluated. And it's also challenging to know when a policy does catch something. I think I already said this, but what actually is caught and what items need to be remediated. So that's sort of like the high level space of what we're looking at. There are two specific issues that sort of come together to this solution that I'm working on right now. First of which is just reevaluating the entire security widget and license compliance widget. The main sort of problem we're trying to solve is that there's a lot of information here, but there's no clear indication of what actually needs to be done to help move the merge request forward. So that's one big piece of this, and this widget as a whole just adds a lot of complexity and isn't really a great experience for triaging and dealing with vulnerabilities if there are a large number of them.
Very noisy.
Yes, exactly. And then the other issue that factors into this solution is that there is a proposal that these policies that exist, security policies, should now be evaluated as merge checks. And this is an attempt to bring more transparency to the policies themselves. So the thought process here is that when a merge request like kicks off and has a security policy that's impacting it, that would first show up as a merge check saying that this policy, like X policy, needs to be evaluated. And that merge check would essentially be blocked or be failed until that policy, until the pipeline fully completes and the policy is fully evaluated. And then at that point, we would update the merge request page to apply an approval requirement if the policy does fail, and then provide some more transparency around what needs to be done to unblock the merge request due to the policy. So that is a high level like overview of the problem space. Job performers are code authors and code reviewers first and foremost, but then this also impacts security domain experts as well. The main job story, thank you for updating that we are looking to solve here is when I'm making changes, I want to deliver secure and performant code so that I can ensure the integrity of my organization's software is not compromised. And really the main need here is that the product is delivered to the end users and that security and policy compliances are maintained while uh, basically keeping the integrity of the organization's assets and making sure they're not compromised. We do have a large body of research that sort of hints to all of these problems and identifies a lot of these pain points and speaks towards these insights. I won't necessarily go through all of that right now. I think we all have a good understanding of that. A couple constraints with the design solution here is that there seems to be a preference towards minimizing the changes to the merge request experience as a whole. So there's a preference towards utilizing existing elements and patterns as much as possible and not looking to make like sweeping changes to the merge request page. And then there's also all of this work is kind of focused on the security and code quality aspect of the merge requests, and we're not really looking to include any other sort of related aspects to merge requests. So no big changes to like approvals or pipelines or anything like that. And then I guess let's see, present a solution, what evidence do we have? So we have the solution aims to essentially address some of these main gaps within the merge request experience workflow that I was highlighting earlier. We really just want to bring more transparency around security policies as a whole. That's critical to this whole workflow. But really it involves helping users understand what policies are apply to a merge request, what requirements they have, and really helping users understand what actions need to be taken to unblock the merge request and basically get their code merged. Any questions or anything about the problem space before we dig into where we're at with solutions?
Sounds like this is the same problem we were talking about before, or the goal is to allow mergeability. What can we do to communicate what the author needs to do to get to merge?
Exactly.
Okay.
Okay.
Cool. Oh, there is stuff going on with the policy. I know you know it, but I might as well mention it. There's a bot comment that'll be created that will more clearly communicate the policy stuff. It's just in a comment and it's not as
yes,
salient.
I think I have the designs pulled up here for reference. We can look at those real quick. So this is looking at sort of what the bot comment looks like. This is, I believe, the most complex example that they were looking at. This would just be dumped in or added as a comment once policy evaluations are complete. And so we're looking to, as part of this initiative, make this information that's shown up in this comment a little bit more of a first class part of the merge request experience.
Yeah.
Okay, but this bot is summarizing everything that is blocking VMR. Well, not everything. There could be
Everything related to security policies. Yeah.
Okay, right. Okay.
All right.
Is that already shipped or is that coming soon?
Shipping? I think I've seen it in some places. I don't know if it's at general availability yet.
Okay.
Justin, maybe you know better than I.
I do not.
Okay. Yeah, I don't have the actual issue open up. I just have this left over from it.
That's okay.
So let me share my Figma and I will walk you through where things are at. So I have a basic prototype of sort of the MVC, I guess, or a potential MVC looking at sort of minimal changes to the merge request and kind of following what's been prescribed in the issue for the solution. And then I have a couple other explorations that we can look at too. So at its most basic, like the merge request page, you still mainly have it all the same. I did move around the order of some widgets here on the page, but that is to be decided. But I was thinking it made sense to move the merge status widget to the top instead of the bottom, so it's easier to find. But so basically the widget order just reversed here, but you know, they work either way. the thought process is that you would have this merge status widget, and then when security policies are being evaluated, you would have it basically be blocking the merge request. The issue around security policies was saying that each security policy should be its own line item in the merge status widget or the mergeability widget. I'm not so sure that makes sense. Like there's, I think, some benefits to that, but if you look at the other merge checks, I have a couple screenshotted here. They all are more like, they're not individual items, they're more groupings of items. So like unresolved threads, like discussions must be resolved. So that's grouping all of them together, or like all approvals must be given. So I'm not sure it follows the same paradigm to have each individual policy as a merge check. I do have a design example of that for reference. So this is what that would look like if they were individual, more or less. And I think it's just creating a lot of extra noise. So what I'm thinking is that it just makes sense to have just a single check for all policies, but I'm sure there's some technical aspects of that that need to be discussed before we determine if that's the right approach. I don't know if either of you have any immediate feedback on that.
Whether or not to group them or list them out separately.
Yeah, yep.
Yeah, I mean, well, I guess I'm curious what happens when you click on view policies.
Sure. Yeah, we can
But
dig into that.
but that does seem more appropriate to me, because you're evaluating like which things you want to address. Like, do I want to go in and see why the pipeline didn't succeed? Do I want to look at the security policies right now? Like,
Mhm.
I agree with like the more progressive disclosure kind of thing. Like, which of these, if there are several reasons that it's being blocked, which of these do I want to dig into right now? And if you
Yep.
just list all the security policies along with other things that might be blocking it, it's just like, it's creating a lot of noise for security, and they may not be ready to focus on security at that point. So I like the way that you did that.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's a really
It's
good, you
also,
explained that well.
yeah,
Go
it's
ahead,
also
Justin.
superfluous, if it doesn't matter, then don't show it to me.
Yeah.
Like as the author, I don't need to know what policies I'm dealing with until I need to deal with them.
Mhm.
So I think that
Yeah.
just the progressive disclosure makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
And then
And I think,
the code reviewer or security domain expert, you got the button there so they can view the policies if they care which policies are being evaluated. Just maybe they'll want to see it to make sure that it's the one policy they created the other day is actually working right or something.
Mhm.
So I could see that, but from the author
Ye-
perspective.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think the mergeability widget here, merge status widget, is the right place to dig into all the policies. I think it's creating a lot of extra noise. So just
Yeah.
basically having that one sort of line item and entry point to dig into policies seems to make more sense for the workflow. But when we click on that, currently we're looking to reutilize the security and license compliant widgets to show policies. So basically you would click on that and it would take you down to those widgets or up to them or wherever they are on the page. And within these widgets, so we're looking to basically pull out all of the like ancillary, like just, it's not going to be a full report of everything that was found now. It's looking to only show what needs to be done to unblock the merge request. So at a high level, we're still providing sort of a summary of everything that's been found. So 5 policy violations and 22 findings, and then listing out what those findings are so they have some context there. And then there's still a link to go view that full report. But then within the widget itself, you would see it's more policy focused. So you'd have each policy that's being evaluated. And then if it's been evaluated, you get the status of that, what needs to be done to resolve it. And then you would have, so if it did fail and catch findings, you'd have each individual finding that needs to be fixed. Each policy itself can have its own specific approval rules and approval groups and stuff. So I thought it made sense to provide a direct like approval request action for each policy. I don't have the workflow for that hashed out yet on what that actually looks like, but tying it directly to approval. So it's a lot easier and a lot more transparent to users to understand what policies have what approval requirements.
Is the request
Like I need
approved
help
kind of
versus I
like
can fix it myself.
right to
Yeah.
bypass fixing it? themselves.
Yeah, so approval would be looking to basically have it obviously accepted or merged in. There isn't a way to say, I need help on these findings per se in this design approach.
Request approval. So requesting approval is to say, I'm not going to fix these. I need you to approve them.
Basically. And that's how it works today. So maybe there's an opportunity to revise our workflow. I've always thought the approval process was a little strange because I don't think you want to merge these findings in generally, but that's what the process is now.
It's also the language of request approval. It's almost sort of alluding to leading you to think that, hey, just skip these.
Yeah.
You
Yep.
know?
And I think in the current, I have it somewhere, a screenshot of the bot comment today. Is that this? Yeah, so if you think these items shouldn't be violations, ask an eligible approver of each policy to approve this merge request. And so this provides a little more context, and I don't have that in the design. Maybe a tooltip or something on the
Right.
approval button could be helpful.
Or maybe it's not request approval, maybe override policy or something like that.
Yeah, request exception is something that's been in the back of my head for a while, but tying it to approvals is like
something that is saying, by clicking this button, I don't believe I should fix these for whatever reason.
Mhm.
But I need someone
I
to
also wonder if it's
let me
like,
through.
if somebody would want to, I mean, I'm thinking from like the approver side, they would probably appreciate some kind of note. Not to say that it has to be required, but it would make it easier if I, the approver, was pinged, I came to this, and rather than just seeing like, oh, they just want to bypass these, and now it's on me to determine if they're true positive, false positive, what's the risk level, like to have some kind of conversation there. So I don't know if we're gonna go down that path, have the ability for the author to write a note that they could send along with that exception request. Here's why I think that these aren't worth blocking the MR. But I don't know, that gets complicated because then like, what do you have threading here?
Yeah, it does get complicated. I know, so in previous design iterations of this, we did have a process similar to that where you could, select your findings, request approval, and provide a note. And that would then essentially allow you to sort of have a thread or discussion on a specific group of items, much like review rounds or something. And that would just show up like as a thread. So you'd have like the 3 items in question and then the discussion on those items. But I don't know if that is necessarily in scope or not for this. I think it's a helpful piece to the workflow, so it's probably something that should be considered.
But can you still see in your design who the eligible approvers are for?
So it is, I want to provide some of that in the policy details drawer. So right now, this is just sort of a punt of a design that I pulled from a different one. I need to do more work here to update this. But it does, yeah, I guess say summarize one approval from AppSec. So having some transparency in the policy information itself around that. But how that connects to the approval widget itself, I think there's opportunity to make that more clear. Yeah, I know I had explored that in more detail in another design a while back, but that is not something that we're going to pursuing. Oop, I can show you that real quick if we're curious. There we go. That was checks tab concept. So I had this idea and my mouse just disconnected. Thank you, Bluetooth.
You're having that problem too, huh? Nice.
Let's see, it just lit up, so maybe I get lucky here. I can do my laptop, it's just not nearly as convenient because it's off to the side. Technical difficulties. Come on, buddy. All right, I'll just drive from here for a moment and it's going to be clumsy. So I had like the idea of being more transparent around approvals. Oh, my Bluetooth cut out. That's nice.
Usually how it
Thanks,
goes.
man.
I think the going sentiment is that the Bluetooth module crashes.
Yes. Okay, got my keyboard. Okay, we're back. Good. Just had to turn it off, turn it back on, the old tech support trick.
Mhm.
So I thought about like in a previous design iteration, providing more transparency around approvals and having each individual approval requirement have its own like detailed page, but that is likely out of scope for what this initiative is for or revolving around because it does touch more of the general merge request thing and is a sort of only a small piece of the security workflow.
That's cool though.
I mean, it makes it easier to remediate things, so we're not going to do it.
Yeah. Well, I hope. Yeah.
Sorry,
We'll
that was my
save the comment.
cynicism coming in. As a manager, I shouldn't speak that way. I apologize.
Thank you for your apology, Justin. Very sincere of you. No, I agree. I think
And
there's
then
opportunities there. Go ahead, Becca.
it should say that there are blockers, right? Under security scans detected, because I can see under code quality, it says 2 blockers. Oh,
Blockers is the status or the severity. So that's keeping the
uh,
existing
that's
severity.
unfortunate.
Yes. So the language we're using for blocking security stuff is that it's a policy violation.
Violation. Okay, rather than a blocker.
Yes.
Code quality is gonna change that though, no?
Yeah, I think we decided that it is hard to change because the other tools, like it's kind of a standard for other tools.
Gotcha.
So yeah, with this design, we would basically pull out the whole list of all the findings. So that would include code quality today. We could consider keeping code quality because it does just dump all of the code quality findings within the widget itself. But that sort of deviates from the paradigm that we're looking to establish here. So hopefully eventually code quality could use security policies because we've seen requests from customers wanting to block merge requests when certain code quality findings are found. So the thought process is down the road, it would follow the exact same pattern as these. But I know there's a little bit of a different like mental model around code quality versus security. So enabling security policies to impact code quality findings maybe is a mental challenge. I don't know, but they essentially should work the same way as other security findings.
So I see that my merge request is blocked. I decide to dig into what these security policies are that are blocking me.
Mhm.
And essentially my options here are resolve the vulnerabilities that the policy is picking up
Yep,
or request approval.
correct. Yeah, those are essentially the two paths. So either you request an exception and have it be them approved, or you go through and deal with the vulnerabilities themselves.
And any
Oh,
other
maybe that's the
vulnerabilities
language,
that
request
aren't part of
exception.
Yeah, request exception would make sense. Just tying that to approvals and making that clear that the exception is getting an approval. Making sure that's a clear workflow.
But then what does who does that go to if there's more than one person on the policy? Does it go to someone random?
So I think they would have to choose to some degree. And I think that's a current downfall of our existing approval processes. It's not clear like who you can choose.
Hmm.
Because I know in
Well,
like this,
maybe
oh,
it's
go
the
ahead.
same pattern as our roulette, where it just says here are all the people that you could get to
That's what I
approve
like
this.
about this, that button that says assign random approver at the
Yep.
top.
Yeah, and we're loading in, or at least in this concept, I was thinking that we would basically pull a list of anyone that's eligible to approve this. So you don't have to, you can see them, you can see their status and stuff. And then you
Well,
could
maybe
also
when you
have a
click
random
that button,
approval.
when you get to that workflow, you can try to implement some of this in a dialogue or something.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's probably worth looking to include that in the proposal. We'll see how much support that gets from the product side.
Yeah.
But I think it's helpful in making it more transparent to users and kind of completing the whole circle, if you will.
I love that idea of the status too. So you can see like, oh, this person's out. No wonder they haven't gotten around to the review.
Yeah, that would be really nice. Yeah, so with this, so you can obviously have a way to open the vulnerability details directly from here, whether it's like a drawer like this or Zoom, get out of the way, 1 second. I also have just like a hidden modal version of it as well. I think either could work. I know in the inline security findings, we're using a drawer now, so maybe there's some nice consistency there, but either could work.
Yeah, the only question there is like, what then happens if you do like resolve with AI or explain?
Because that opened the drawer right now.
So that would close the modal and open a drawer.
Yeah, if it was a modal, I suppose.
Yeah.
And I guess we'd have the same issue either way with the drawer. I mean, you could look at having sort of like nested drawers in some degree. Like I know for Dast designs I did a while back, you'd have like your main drawer and then you could click on something, it would take you to another drawer, but you'd still have a back button at the top to go back to your previous drawer. So it kind of created this weird like drawer workflow similar to like mobile design patterns.
I don't know what resolve with AI does here. Does it resolve it within this merge request or does it open up a new merge request? Because when you're doing it from the vulnerability detail page off the vulnerability report, it opens up a new merge request, but
Mm,
you're already in a merge request. So I don't know how that will work. Anyways, we can put a bookmark on that.
yeah. Yeah, I suppose we could probably don't surface this in merge request today, the resolve with AI
Right.
option.
Not yet, but people definitely want it. They're
Oh
still
yeah, I believe
Yeah, I
that.
think you got to definitely think about that coming when you come up with solutions, because
Mhm.
that aspect of security is something that people really want. So
Yeah,
better
yeah,
to be aware of it and design knowing it's coming than to not.
agreed, agreed. So one thing, I guess that more at a high level, I want to get feedback on. So we have this whole sort of figure out where I'm at here. This whole like approach of using the existing widgets today to sort of deal with this workflow. Obviously, there's some ways to improve it around approvals and stuff. But I still think that this doesn't help with the issue that there's a lot of noise on the merge request overview page, and it creates sort of a small area to deal with everything. So I still think that it could be beneficial to, instead of have everything happen on the overview page, to look at sort of breaking out into a separate tab or page or something to deal with all of this stuff. So having that sort of entry point from the overview to deal with policies and then sending them to a more dedicated page. I don't know how much support this would get, but this is essentially all the same stuff that's in that widget today, but just with a little bit more detail or a little bit
Space.
more space to breathe. And then also potentially, so you'd have maybe a tab for policy violations, but then also have all the individual reports too. So it would get rid of the need for sending people to the pipeline security tab, and then we'd have a dedicated report for what's net new for each of these tools within the merge request today. I think that could be helpful.
So are
Right.
you
Because I was
saying
going to
that?
ask, like, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Oh, I was going to ask, like, what if they do maybe not the developer or merge request author, but the security person wants to see the rest of the findings, they would have to go
Mhm.
to the security tab of the pipeline page.
Today, yes, that's
Which
how it
is
works.
super hidden and not really the best designed.
Yeah, and it
Right.
kind of deviates from the workflow a bit too, because I know there's a lot of feedback, even from the create side, knowing that it's difficult for users to navigate back to a merge request once they get to that pipeline page.
Yeah.
So the current widget is basically going to stay the same, and we would expect people to click on it and pop a dialog to deal with individual objects. That's the current direction.
That is the direction that seemed to have favor from the product side of things.
The create product side or all
Yes.
of the product side?
I don't know. I think it was driven, the proposal, the two issues were created from the create product manager, and that was what the original, like what he presented, and it seemed like people were supportive of that. But I think there were, in some of the discussions, suggestions that it may be better to have a dedicated area for some of this stuff.
Because it doesn't change the fact that you could have 20 vulnerabilities and then you have a little tiny scroll bar.
Mm-hmm.
Like it doesn't fix any of that if you still use
Yeah.
this widget. You've cleaned up some things and you've made it more clear by putting the overview at the top and being more clear on what's blocking and things like that. That's great.
Mm-hmm.
But then when it comes to actually dealing with it, that's not very helpful.
Yeah, I
That's
still
not
think
fixed.
it's a small area, and it's, yeah, there's a lot of potential usability problems with cramping it all into these widgets.
Well, and I'm also wondering what happens. I mean, I guess if you get approval to ignore these or you remediate all of them, I guess then they would switch to that one at the bottom, sec policy 2 passed.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah,
so,
something like that.
but then the number of critical, high, and others there would basically say 0. That's right under security scans detected 5 policy violations and 22 findings.
I think that would still stay the same because you wouldn't have removed them per se. They would just be accepted from or being allowed to be merged in then.
Okay, so the way you did those totals is it's just total.
Yes.
3 of those critical are showing there. There's only 2 high. I mean, maybe you have to scroll to see the rest, but
Yep.
it also might be that the other 4 high are hidden
Not
because
in,
don't
yeah,
apply to the policy.
exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, and the thought in this design too is that like potentially you could have one vulnerability that shows up in multiple policies, like this first vulnerability here. I have it in the prototype, but essentially if it is affected by 2 policies, it would show up twice in this list because we're spelling out each individual finding that needs to be addressed for each policy.
Right.
I don't know if that's the right direction or what makes sense, but that's what I was thinking. Because it's nice to know what findings apply to what policy.
Right.
It does create a lot of duplication or potential duplication.
Is there any way that you could clean this up in a way that fixes the concerns we currently have while not doing a whole new page?
Concerns being like the scrollability,
The scrolls.
noise.
Yeah.
I haven't come up with a way to do that yet because I know I did some explorations around this widget, and even looking at like creating a more report style aspect of it, but it kind of just felt off and weird. Like I was looking, this isn't really solving the problems, but just looking at like providing a more like high level overview around like the findings for each thing. So I guess what I'm getting at is like deviating too far from the widget framework that we have established tends to feel a little off in some ways.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean we can't do it.
I'm just
Any idea
thinking out
what the
loud here.
reasoning was?
Sorry, go ahead.
No, think out loud.
I'm also wondering what it looks like. This may be a terrible idea, but to like list out all of the vulnerabilities and then have it kind of like a table. So on the right, it says like how many policies it applies to. So that way you don't have duplicate vulnerabilities, but it'll say, 1 policy, and then you can click on it, a drawer opens and you see what the policy is, or 2 policies.
Yeah.
Right, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But that way, yeah, getting like the check boxes in there, because I'm thinking like, okay, this is very manageable if there's like 3 of them. If there's under 10 of them, it's kind of manageable.
Mhm.
Over that, it gets a little ridiculous because let's say the security engineer, I come in here and decide that, 5 of these, okay, let's say there's 10. 3 of them are false positives. I can dismiss those.
Mhm.
3 of them are true positive. I want the MR author to remediate them. And 1 of them is a true positive, but it doesn't actually meet the criteria of needing to block the merge request. So I'm going to open up an issue for that and just run the remediation on that in parallel.
Mhm.
I mean, I'm thinking like, how do I tell the MR author, like, no, I'm not just gonna blanket approve an exception across. Like, I'll do that for these 3, but these other ones you
Mhm.
have to remediate. Like, there's not
Yeah.
really a good way of saying like these ones are important to remove. And then if I do want to create an issue for multiple of them and say like, okay, I'll grant a temporary exception, but I still want to look into these. It
Mhm.
would be nice if they could bulk select a couple of them, create an issue or create individual issues. I'm just thinking of the whole workflow, and I know this isn't very
Yeah.
MVC friendly, but I'm just thinking like of all of the possible paths ahead for each vulnerability. It won't always just be like blanket exception, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, and we definitely
Well,
had some of those explorations in the earlier iterations of these designs. Um, or I guess it's different. There was the checks tab, which just kind of got abandoned. But a lot of that was sort of being addressed here. We could select particular vulnerabilities and have bulk actions
Yeah.
applied to them
That's
around
why I like
approvals or
this
stuff.
much. Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out how to ask this, but it seems very MVC what you're showing right now.
Mhm.
And
Yes.
I'm curious about what's the end vision.
Mhm.
Because I could be more accepting of this MVC if I knew where it was heading.
Right.
But I don't, I think we're doing what we usually do and we're working backwards.
Yep.
And I'm wondering what resistance are you getting to piecemeal this so small? You're not really changing the widget the way it works. You're
Yep.
just tidying up communication, which is a great first step.
Well, it is changing the way it works and the fact that we're only showing what needs to be dealt with versus everything.
Right. Which is something that was supposed to have been done a while ago.
Yes. So it does address a key problem in that regard and then giving more transparency around the policies.
So there should be less in the widget.
Yes, yeah. Ideally, unless you have policies set up to block every single security finding that is found,
Right.
it should be only a subset of total results.
But then the goal of the project is focused on improving security workflows in a merge request.
Hmm. Yeah, and this doesn't do a
So
whole lot to deal with the
yeah,
remediation aspect, the collaboration and stuff. And
exactly.
that has not, it's a item on our list to talk about for our next meeting, which is coming up later today. But it hasn't gotten support to explore or include that into this proposal yet, at least from the product management side of things. There's questions, I think, from both security and the create or secure and create PMs around the importance and value of like promoting discussions and stuff with around these vulnerabilities. But I think we have some research that supports the need for that
I
feedback.
mean, like users wouldn't want to discuss a vulnerability and how to remediate it.
Yeah,
Is that what you're
there's
saying?
questions around the value of enabling that within the merge request, I guess. Like, I think it's valuable to be able to
So they're
actually
saying
work on these
that
items.
what users really want is to just push stuff off so it goes to the vulnerability report to be dealt with later. So you can merge a security violation or a vulnerability into the product. So later we'll fix the vulnerability when we get to it. Is that what they're saying?
I guess. I know Alana's been pretty clear around, like, most people want to deal with vulnerabilities within the merge request before they get merged in. But I think that the create PM hasn't fully had a chance to understand that aspect of the problem space and why that's important. And therefore, I think that's why it hasn't gotten a lot of support yet.
Okay. Aside from that, I wonder if it might be when you're doing this overview with them on this design, there might be a way to mention the MVC-ness of this and that you think it would be beneficial to also show the vision of where we want to go.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And I think a
Maybe
lot of that
Chase.
vision, for better or for worse, is in this checks tab design, whether we remove some of the stuff that, like, approvals, pipeline, stuff like that. I don't know.
Yeah,
Because a lot of the
I
stuff we
agree.
talked about was has been dealt with in this concept, but I know it's a larger change or a larger proposal vision.
And you know, that's fine. We're not saying we need to do it today. It's just that an MVC is an MVC.
Yep.
It's one small step to the end, to the goal. You know, and I'm getting the sense that that's not being talked about. We're just focusing on that one small step.
Yeah, I think you're right. The two issues are focused on solving problems in a definitely an MVC way, where we're not thinking about the larger vision and workflow and what we're trying to accomplish as a whole, or wanting to accomplish and put forth.
Yeah. All right. Anyway, carry on.
Yeah, I mean, that's honestly the bulk of where it's at right now. So looking at, let's get back to the design issue here. So largely looking at the reworking the widgets, but I think that doing something more like this full report may make sense. And, like, even this aspect where this is just showing what's in the widget today, but it could potentially be expanded to include some of this other stuff. Like, I don't have checkboxes here. I cleaned up the design, but it certainly could still be like almost the original design from the checks tab, where you have individual checkboxes and can apply bulk actions to these items and stuff.
Know if the request approval thing works. I mean, right now what we have is reach out to the approver, to a eligible approver, and you know, they'll go in and assess what was detected that is blocking this thing. But request approval almost seems like, is that request approval to bypass this policy? Or is that a request approval on the merge request?
So it is, what actually happens is it is an approval on the merge request, and getting that approval will bypass the policy. But I've always had an issue with the request approval process for security policies too, because I don't think we want people to approve this. We want people to ideally deal with this stuff. So requesting help, remediating it, that should be the first course of action we're promoting. And at the extreme, requesting an exception or dismissing. I think dismissing a vulnerability for the merge request is probably more an appropriate action than having them be approved to be merged in. Because I think it's the same result either way. They get merged into the main branch then.
Well, plus they might approve bypassing one policy, but not another. Whereas right now it's a blanket approval.
Right now, when I look at this UI, it seems like if I want to bypass these three policies that are blocking me, I would have to go request, request, request. But that's not actually what happens, right? I'm just requesting approval kind of across all of these policies, right?
It
'Cause it's
really
just approval
depends,
at
and
the
it's not very clear right now because these three policies can have different approval requirements, but they could
Yeah.
also have the same approval requirement.
Right. There could be different teams that need to approve them.
Mhm.
There could be one policy that's so extreme that they need senior security engineers to approve
Yeah,
them.
because you can, when you're building your policy, you can pick roles
Yep. And
and quantity
individuals. Yep.
and yeah, and the individuals.
And one might be, I mean, they might be like scanner based as well. Some engineers are more comfortable working with like container scanning, dependency scanning.
Mhm.
Other ones are going to be more SaaS.
I feel like your instinct is correct in thinking this is the wrong workflow that we even want to sort of push.
Mhm.
You know, I
Yeah.
mean, we kind of have our general principles when it comes to security mindedness in the MR that I think we're still getting pushed around on, for lack of a better way of saying it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
But it's also tied to how policies work today too, because you have this whole approval workflow and like that's sort of misleading because again, we don't want people to approve these. We want them to take action to dismiss or resolve them. And it could be just dismissing for the MR itself and they still get merged in
but
or whatever.
that's a product of the existing UI
Yeah, that's true. Very
that they
true.
had to deal with. You know, it was the constraint that they had to deal with.
Yep. Yeah. And like, how do we change that at a larger level here? Because I
Yeah.
know
So
that's going to get
MVC
some
wise,
pushback.
sure, keep it the same. But visionarily, that's not helping us. It's not helping the workflow. It's not ensuring the goal of keeping the product secure.
Yep.
You know,
Even like
like
in a
there are
request
aspects of your
assistance would
job
go a long way.
stories and your goals that are not being achieved by this MVC.
Hmm. Yeah.
And you know, maybe that's the direction to take the discussion
Yeah.
in
It's a
order to
very good
get you
point.
to create the vision. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. I think you're right, pointing to some of these potential issues on the larger workflow that we actually want to enable. Yeah, because there are definitely
Yeah.
gaps within the current implementation, especially if we look at just updating the widget like this.
Yeah. It's like over in general, I mean, this MVC is better for sure, but it's
Hmm.
not the best, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess getting support on that will be interesting. Getting buy-in, I guess, from the PM side that while this works and it is an improvement, we could do so much better.
Right.
And like maybe some
And
user
I mean
testing
that's our
will go a long way to help with give support to that.
well, user testing's tough because user testing is more, can you achieve this goal? And yeah, they can achieve the goal.
Hmm.
They can achieve it now.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just, can you figure out all the unknowns and all the stuff we're not communicating?
Yeah. It's I mean, we're trying to make it better.
Hmm. Yeah. I think you can
This
get
is
that
a
from user
this is a
testing
step.
too. If you were to do two different, like this versus like the vision, which one is more successful in helping users accomplish their goal?
Okay, good point. Okay. Getting back to the vision concept, I agree with you for sure. I was thinking more along the lines of just putting this in front of them to see if they can complete a task and then U-Bucks at the end kind of thing. But
Hmm.
yeah, if you're comparing the two, that would be interesting to see.
Yeah.
But
Agreed.
you need the B, you need the vision to be able
Yes.
to test.
Yeah. Like I said, I think a lot of that is in the checks tab design. Like I said, it could probably go through some revisions to remove some of this other stuff that is sensitive or has other overlap into other groups. I don't know that it's vital to this, but communicating
Yeah.
blockers and then supporting the proper workflows around each of these vulnerabilities would go a long way.
Yeah,
You
maybe
know, I'm also
since we're only focusing on security here, because that was one of the provisions that you wrote down in the agenda,
Yep.
maybe this does become a security tab
Yeah.
or something to that effect.
I'm
I
still
mean,
in support of
we
it.
also have things in play to solve the problems of noise to actual data ratio. Like we are rolling out more policies like auto dismiss and auto resolve policies because we keep hearing in threat insights like I just don't care about this one, or I don't care about, you know, if it goes to this project, this file, if it's this type. So I mean, we're also dealing with a lot of these problems in other ways, but I just want to keep in mind that like what we often hear among security teams is shifting left. I mean, they want to empower the developer. And so I think there's some reaction that I have to something like request approval, where it's just like putting it back on the security team. It's just like, it's a very convenient way of just saying like, I don't want to deal with this. You all deal with this. Like
Yep.
something that's in the Threat Insights roadmap for this year is to let companies include resources for remediation. So use these NIST standards or this OWASP or whatever guidance, or they can include their own, what is it called, like run books or basically workbooks. No,
Oh, sure, like a playbook or something.
playbook, yeah, whatever they call them.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of, I mean, our goal is really to like reduce the noise, so only the riskiest, most relevant, most true positive things are coming through here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because
Mm-hmm.
that's something that we can't deal with. Like they have to be able to tune this stuff because otherwise it's just overwhelming, and that's where you get developers saying, I can't deal with this. This is too much. So if we can work towards, and this is our goal in Threat Insights, is working towards making these things relevant, true positive, making sure that they're risky, and then, you know, working on empowering the developers to understand that risk and giving them a path forward. So it's not all just on the security team, go back to the security team, help security team. Like, what is this,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Yep.
So we are trying to like work towards that vision as well. And of course, when we do incorporate AI into this, that will be really helpful for developers as well. And I know we haven't fully thought through that workflow, but I'm just keeping that in mind too, as like a long-term goal.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that
And
makes a lot of
I'll go
sense.
back to the
Mhm.
jobs. Like that part is what's missing. You know, we're not helping them deliver secure code.
Yeah.
And not to the highest degree that we can, right? We're doing the bare minimum. We're saying, you've got problems, fix them.
Yep.
We're not
Well, and
really.
is this, I know we're at time, but is this in addition to inline findings or how does
Yes.
that, okay.
Yep. So any findings that can be related to code and shown in line still would be.
Um,
And then I also have just like looking at, go back to the prototype here, like the vulnerability drawer, like surfacing if it violates the policy here. So then if you do access this through the changes tab or something, you at least have that context. Because
Yeah.
this is something that isn't part of the vulnerability details today, is like showing policies and stuff.
That's when you clicked on a specific
Yes.
line?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, and this drawer is essentially just a rehash of what's been done from previous designs in the checks tab and other stuff. I just pulled it in here because it still makes sense to me.
What are the three dots at the bottom?
So that is your other actions. So dismiss, finding, create an issue. Putting all those across the bottom seemed like too
Right.
much. I think we wanted to promote resolve if it is applicable. Otherwise, you probably have one of these two or both of them showing.
And if you're not allowed to dismiss the finding due to your permission allowances and whatnot, you'd be able to request someone else to do it.
I would think that would make sense. I know that was something I explored in other designs. I haven't gotten to showing that in this workflow. But I think that would be helpful to be able to ask help on specific items. But I know that's a new feature functionality that we would be applying to findings in a merge request today.
Okay.
Is anyone from the policy automatically pinged when these come up? No,
I don't
that's
believe
where you
so.
get the like random assign somebody or whatever. Because you can, there's no point if it's just like one vulnerability and you're like, oh yeah, I should fix that, then there's no need to ping the approver at
Mhm.
all, right? Because they may just like fix it and then that would be just be extra noise for the approver that they don't actually need their help because they fixed it and then it's gone.
Mhm.
Okay.
So from here, the workflow would be to probably
Either-
click on each individual one to see what they are.
Yep, and then work through the remediation process or request help. I assume we would have that if we didn't have the option to dismiss or create. So you'd have to work through each individual one, or you could, again, request approval or an exception as a blanket for the policy.
But thinking through that, I mean, are they requesting help on every one that they want help on? And then what does that look like for the approver? How would they see like, oh, they need help on these 5?
Yeah, I know I had, yeah, I don't think it's hooked up properly, but I know in previous explorations I had done where you could essentially do like a review round for a merge request, like when you're going and leaving multiple comments on lines of code, bulking that up into a full review and then submitting that to somebody with like a general comment. Doing that for security findings or any sort of findings would make sense as well, where you could select this, that, provide comments, and then push that whole review to somebody either as a request for help or a request for an exception or something like that. So just tying into the review process that currently exists for merge requests, essentially.
Mhm.
I think from watching the past meeting videos, the question that you'll get next is why this isn't necessary, because now that you've cleaned up the widget, it's only showing you the proper I was going to say blockers, policy violations. So there should be less quantity there. So it should be
Yep.
easier, less need for bulk action. Like if this is a realistic view, there's only 5 policy violations. That's
Yeah,
not
but
that terrible to go individually. And you could also very easily add checkboxes here.
mhm. Yeah,
So we need to find out how realistic, how many policy violations does the average MR have?
yeah, and I
Which
know
I don't know if we can get.
it could be very large too if you're just applying policies for the first time, I believe. But yeah, I think that's been a question that Kai has been asking for a while, is
So
around what's realistic.
it shouldn't be very large at an MR level. It should be very
Mm.
large at an entire repo level.
Yeah.
But if we are specifically able to finally only show violations related to this code block, this
Mhm.
MR, you would think that it probably wouldn't be that much.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
So, I mean, maybe I was being way too mean to them overall in the beginning of this call or 20 minutes ago. So if you're going to do a vision, then we're going to have to make sure that we really truly understand what its typical MR's violations would be.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm not sure how we get that. Maybe Grant and Camelia can help out getting a realistic sense of that. I don't know though.
Yeah, I don't either. At one point, I was wondering if we could just start asking users
Yeah.
somehow or another, like maybe jump onto CMS calls or something in CSM, and asking them if we could just ask the simple question: what's a typical MR look like in terms of vulnerabilities? But they might not be able to tell us that because I don't know if we're able to completely hide other branches
Yeah.
or not.
Yeah. That's true. I mean, we certainly could try to do some like moderated solution validation on this and not have them show their stuff, but maybe show two design solutions, this and the more vision, and then ask them what's realistic for them and their merge requests, what's most typical. Obviously, that would extend the timeline a bit and getting the solution out the door.
Yeah, maybe start poking around in our channels to see if anyone can help us get that data. I know that at a past call, maybe a month ago at this point, someone asked Lana to do that, to find that out, if memory serves.
Yeah.
But it's worth digging into. Before I guess I should backtrack my overly negative initial comments about MVCs.
Yeah, but nevertheless, I think leveraging the widgets that we have today and just like doing it this way it adds a lot of complication to the connected workflows and stuff, where like having a dedicated view where we can dig into this stuff outside of the overview tab would help, I think, ease that workflow and give us room and opportunities to make some of this stuff more clear within the UI. Maybe.
Exactly. Or maybe there are other solutions that can be added into this drawer or dialogue or whatever that can still help with those bits.
Yeah, very true.
I mean, the jobs and the goals are still what they are. We still need to make sure that the workflows are indeed being made better, that we are helping them deliver code that is secure. Therefore, shifting left, right? Where it's being evaluated at the MR level. Currently, the furthest we can get left.
Yeah.
The furthest left is at the Visual Studio level when they're writing.
Yes. Yeah, an IDE or something.
Yeah. So
but
we have to make sure those goals are being checked off as you're moving your design forward, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think a big missing piece of that here is the collaboration and sort of, I guess, it's essentially just the collaboration aspect of working on these things, requesting help, applying actions to some things and not other things. Like it's all the connected workflows of dealing with these vulnerabilities, not just surfacing them.
Yeah, and now if you go down that path and you do come to the final conclusion that a drawer isn't the best way to do that, and you need more space, fine, that's totally cool. But
yeah, we could do a large modal or something, but there's pros and cons to that method too, versus a dedicated like page.
Yeah. All right, we're well over time.
Yep. Good feedback.
I'm glad to
good
see this is moving forward.
Agreed.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I would like to see it move forward in a little bit less MVP fashion, or at least have a sense of the vision, like you were saying, Justin. I think that's important.
Yeah.
Just a matter of getting buy-in on making sure we have that gold star or North Star, like, and everyone's bought in on that.
It would be nice if it's a gold North Star.
Yeah, it's true.
I'm trying to get clarification because we had a discussion like a month or two ago about like what is there was a lot of confusion within Threat Insights about what the findings were in the security tab of the pipeline page. To the point
I thought
that
they were everything.
That's my understanding too.
And that's one of the problems with it.
Yes.
Everything being what?
Like it wasn't breaking it out for just that MR.
Yep, it's everything that's in the existing current like main branch or whatever you branched off of, plus what's being introduced by the merge request, is my understanding.
Right, but those numbers, like if you have 10 security findings in the MR and then go to the pipeline page, there's not necessarily going to be 10 there. There could be 20 over there.
Or 120.
Or 100, yeah. So that's why I'm also like just really.
Well,
I hate the idea of relying on What?
One side is we should not rely on that as our go-to resolution or solution for this. But then you could also say, well, can't we just fix the pipeline page so it's only showing you what's in the MR? Like, why don't we do that? It's an individual pipeline for that was run for that MR. So why is it showing everything?
There's not necessarily an MR attached to a pipeline run.
It doesn't have to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you've specifically clicked, you're in your MR, viewing the pipeline for that MR.
Yep.
Click to view the pipeline detail. Why would that specifically run MR pipeline show vulnerabilities for the entire branch?
I think each individual pipeline needs to show like their total results of everything that was found. And some of that stuff can be stuff that's already known. Being able to filter down to show what's new would be helpful. And having that be a default filter could go a long way.
Yeah,
But
because
that's
there's a possible
between
yeah,
going
the
from the
workflows
pipeline back and
exactly
forth.
exactly.
That.
But that could be fixed.
Well, and that also carries over into our need to filter by branch on the vulnerability report. So it's not just the default branch.
Mm-hmm.
Because people just want to see all vulnerabilities, you know, to the test branch, to the dev branch or whatever. They don't want to wait until it comes out on the default branch, which is usually the main branch or the production branch. It's too late at that point, right? So
Yeah,
that's why we're relying on looking at pipelines and looking at MRs. Because if it ends up on the vulnerability report, it's already too late. So we've also got to change the vulnerability report so they can look at different branches.
If a company's doing it right, the vulnerability report should not exist.
Yeah.
yeah.
Right.
Well,
Now
having a
we
branch
might be able to
vulnerability report
build
could be
work
helpful.
things in. Yeah, we might be for now because the way it is, you know, most companies are so far behind
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
that they still need it. But I mean, in an ideal world, it shouldn't exist. Users should stop things at the MR level, so it never has to get put into the vulnerability report. However, there could be workflows, and I think Camellia had this in a design a while ago, where you say, "Fix this later." You know, this isn't terrible, but we do want to fix it. Remind me in 2 weeks, and then it would go to the vulnerability report and have, you know, a timer or something.
Right.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And that's what the create issue workflow is essentially that we have from the MR right now.
Yeah, and I know dismissal workflow has been sort of explored around that to dismiss for this MR versus dismiss like altogether.
Mm-hmm.
I know that was explored in previous designs that I've seen for the past couple of years.
Yeah, like that type of stuff is where I'd like to see the vision go.
Yeah,
and then we can figure out, well, okay, cool, what do we do for right now? Yeah, and I think your current state is pretty decent as an MVC.
Yeah. This is really hard. Michael, thank you for taking this on. I mean, not like you signed up for it. You got it given to you, but
the fun problem space. But yeah, it's challenging to get buy-in and think about the entire, like, how are we, you know, building a better workflow for users versus just like making it a little better, making the problems better.
Yeah.
Yeah, big opportunity though.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
All right.
I know we're, like you said, well over time. But
yeah, let us know how we can better support you joining meetings or chiming in on threads or whatever.
Okay. Appreciate that. I'll definitely let you know.
Feel like
I definitely will need some championship or championship. I don't know what I'm trying to say. Some support. Yeah, there we go. Helping to support the pursuit and, you know, larger vision here versus just doing an MVC.
Yeah. This is tough stuff, and you've done some really cool exploration. So
cool. Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thanks everybody. Have a good rest of your day.
You too now.
Bye.
Bye.